I never thought I'd be the one to ruin my sister's wedding. Growing up in suburban Pennsylvania, Jessica and I had always been different. She was the golden child, I was the responsible one. But as I stared at the mountain of cream-coloured envelopes that had been dumped on my doorstep without warning, something inside me finally snapped. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 32 years old, work as a paralegal at Bradshaw & Klein in Philadelphia, and until last month, I'd spent my entire adult life trying to please my family, especially my mother. I'd given up scholarships, relationships, and career opportunities to stay close to home after Dad died. I'd helped raise Jessica when Mum had to work extra shifts. I'd been the shoulder everyone cried on, the hands that fixed everything, the voice of reason when emotions ran high. And how was I repaid? With 100 wedding invitations delivered to my apartment without so much as a text message, asking if it was okay. I discovered them when I got home from work on a rainy Tuesday in April. A soggy cardboard box sat outside my door, water seeping through the bottom. Inside were stacks of expensive, hand-addressed envelopes, Jessica's wedding invitations to some of the most influential people in the tri-state area. Her future in-laws, the Montgomerys, were old money, and this wedding was supposed to be the social event of the season. My fingers trembled as I picked up one of the envelopes. Mr. and Mrs. Edward Thompson. I read aloud, recognizing the name of the senior partner at my firm. I flipped it over. The return address was mine, not Jessica's, not Mom's, mine. I fumbled for my phone and called my sister. "Hey, Em, what's up?" Jessica's voice was bright, carefree. "There are 100 wedding invitations sitting in my apartment right now," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "With my return address on them." "Oh." Thank God they arrived. Mum was worried they'd get lost. Jessica didn't miss a beat. "So we need those mailed out like yesterday. The wedding's in 8 weeks, and people need time to RSVP. Jessica," I said slowly, "why is my address on these invitations?" "Oh, that." She laughed. "Well, you know how Mum's place is too small. And I'm staying with Derek's parents until the wedding. It just made sense to use your place. Plus, you're so organised. We knew you wouldn't mind handling the RSVPs. I closed my eyes, counting to 10 silently. "You're asking me to manage the RSVPs for your wedding?" "Not asking, silly. It's already done." The address is printed on all the response cards. I could hear her smile through the phone. "Oh, and if anyone calls with questions, just take a message. I've been swamped with wedding stuff." My apartment was a small one-bedroom in Rittenhouse Square. I'd saved for years to afford it. It was my sanctuary after long days dealing with demanding attorneys and difficult clients. And now, without asking, my family had turned it into a wedding command centre. "Jessica, I can't do this," I said firmly. "I work 50-hour weeks. I'm in the middle of the Peterson case. Emily, please don't start with the excuses." Jessica's voice took on the wheedling tone she'd perfected since childhood. "This is my wedding. The most important day of my life. Don't you want me to be happy?" The familiar guilt rose like bile in my throat. I'd heard some version of this my entire life. Don't you want us to be happy? Don't you want to help the family, after everything we've been through? "I have to go," I said abruptly, and hung up. My phone immediately lit up with a text from my mother. "Jessica's crying. Call her back right now." I turned off my phone and sank onto my couch, staring at the box of invitations. The return address labels were already affixed to each envelope, custom printed with my name and address in elegant script. This hadn't been a last-minute decision. They'd planned this, assuming I would fall in line as I always had. That night, as rain lashed against my windows, I made a decision. For once in my life, I wasn't going to smile and accommodate everyone else's needs at the expense of my own. I wasn't going to be the family doormat anymore. I just didn't realise how far things would go, or how much I would stand to lose, and ultimately gain, by finally standing up for myself. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls, 8 from Jessica, 9 from my mother, and 32 text messages varying from guilt-tripping, "How could you do this to your sister?" to outright threats. "If you ruin this wedding, you're no longer part of this family." I got ready for work in a daze, my mind racing. The box of invitations sat on my dining table, a physical manifestation of my family's assumption that my time, my space, and my life were resources they could tap into whenever they wanted. "Morning, Emily," said Diane, our receptionist, as I walked into the office. She took one look at my face and pushed a cup of coffee toward me. "Rough night?" "You could say that." I managed a weak smile. "Mr. Bradshaw wants to see you in his office at 10, she added. "Something about the Peterson depositions." Great, just what I needed, more pressure. The Peterson case was massive, a complicated corporate merger with millions of dollars at stake. As the lead paralegal, I'd been working 16-hour days preparing documents and coordinating with the legal team. At my desk, I tried to focus on reviewing witness statements, but my mind kept drifting to the invitations. I could just mail them out and be done with it, take the path of least resistance, as I always had. But something had changed. Maybe it was turning 32 last month and realizing I was still living my life according to everyone else's needs. Maybe it was watching Jessica, 7 years my junior, get everything she wanted while I scrambled to pick up the pieces. Or maybe I was just tired, bone-tired of being taken for granted. "Emily," Mr. Bradshaw's voice snapped me back to reality. "My office, please." Howard Bradshaw was in his 60s, with steel grey hair and the sharp eyes of a man who'd spent 40 years dissecting legal arguments. He gestured for me to sit. "The Peterson depositions start next week," he said without preamble. "I need you to handle the document management. We're talking thousands of pages of evidence that need to be organised, indexed, and accessible at a moment's notice." "Of course," I nodded. It was a huge responsibility, and exactly the kind of challenge I'd been working toward. "I'll start preparing today." "Good." He leaned back in his chair. "You know, Emily, I've been watching your work. You have a good legal mind. Have you ever considered law school?" The question caught me off guard. Yes, actually. I was accepted to Penn Law 7 years ago. But you didn't go." It wasn't a question. "Family circumstances," I said vaguely. What I didn't say, Mum had guilted me into staying close to home to help with Jessica. Dad had just died, and she'd said she couldn't manage alone. I'd deferred my admission, then deferred again, until eventually the opportunity had slipped away. Mr. Bradshaw nodded thoughtfully. "Well, it's never too late. The firm has a scholarship program for promising employees, something to think about." As I left his office, my phone buzzed with another text from my mother. "Jessica and I are coming over tonight at 7. We need to talk about the invitations." My stomach clenched. I texted back, "Working late, Peterson case." Her response was immediate. "Family comes first, Emily. We'll be there at 8. I stared at the message, a familiar sense of helplessness washing over me. Then I looked up and caught my reflection in the glass wall of the conference room. The woman looking back at me seemed tired. Resigned. Was this who I wanted to be for the rest of my life? I straightened my shoulders and texted, "No, I have work commitments. I'll call tomorrow." Then I turned off my phone and threw myself into preparing for the Peterson depositions. For once, my priorities would come first. Of course, they showed up anyway. At 8:15 p.m, while I was deep in document review at my dining table, the buzzer to my apartment rang. I ignored it. It rang again, longer this time. Then my landline, which almost nobody used, started ringing. I sighed, saved my work, and picked up the phone. "Emily Carter," I answered professionally. "Emily, it's Mum. We're downstairs, let us in." I closed my eyes briefly. "Mum, I told you I'm working tonight. I can't have visitors." "Don't be ridiculous," she scoffed. "We're not visitors, we're family, and this is important." The familiar guilt tactic, family trumps everything, including boundaries, hit its mark. Before I could stop myself, I'd buzzed them in. 5 minutes later, my mother, Diane Carter, swept into my apartment like a force of nature. At 58, she was still striking, with the same dark hair and blue eyes she'd passed down to both her daughters. Jessica followed behind her, looking like she'd stepped out of a bridal magazine in a white sundress and perfectly styled blonde hair. Dyed. Unlike my natural brown. "This place is a mess," Mum said by way of greeting, eyeing the papers spread across my dining table. And you look exhausted. Are you eating properly? Hello to you too, Mum, I said, gathering my documents. Jessica. My sister at least had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Hey, Em, sorry to barge in. Are those the invitations? Mum interrupted, spotting the box. Good, they haven't been damaged. We need to get these out immediately. I watched as she began inspecting the envelopes, checking for water damage from the rain. Jessica hovered nearby, not meeting my eyes. I can't do this, I said finally. I can't manage the RSVPs for the wedding. I'm in the middle of a major case, and I don't have the time or capacity to take on planning responsibilities for a wedding I'm barely involved in. Mum looked up sharply. What do you mean, barely involved? You're the maid of honour. Am I? I raised an eyebrow. Because Jessica asked Lindsay to go dress shopping with her, and cake tasting, and venue hunting. I found out about the engagement on Facebook, Mum. Jessica had the decency to flush. You're always working. Lindsay had the time. But not the address, apparently, I cut in. That responsibility you saved for me. Emily Jean Carter, my mother said in the warning tone that had kept me in line since childhood. Your sister has asked for one small favour for her wedding, after everything this family has done for you. Done for me? I repeated incredulously. What exactly has this family done for me, Mum? Because from where I'm standing, I'm the one who's been doing for everyone else my entire adult life. The words hung in the air. Dangerous and unprecedented. I'd never spoken to my mother this way. How dare you? She whispered. After I sacrificed everything to raise you girls alone. You weren't alone. The dam had broken now, years of resentment flooding out. You had me. I was 18 when Dad died, and instead of going to college, I got a job to help with bills. I cooked dinner. I helped Jessica with homework. I drove her to activities. I deferred law school to stay close to home because you said you needed me. Jessica's eyes widened. You were going to law school? Penn Law, full scholarship. I laughed bitterly, but Mum said she couldn't manage without me nearby. So I stayed, and stayed, and stayed. My mother's face had gone pale. That was your choice. Was it? Every time I tried to build my own life, there was a family emergency, a crisis only I could solve. I gestured around my apartment. This place is the first thing I've ever had that's just for me. And now you want to take that too. It's just mail, Jessica said quietly. We're not taking anything. It's not just mail, I was shouting now, years of suppressed frustration boiling over. It's the assumption that I'll drop everything to accommodate you. It's putting my address on response cards without asking me. It's showing up at my home after I explicitly said no. My mother drew herself up. If you're going to be selfish about this, fine. We'll find someone else to handle the RSVPs. She turned to Jessica. Come on, we're leaving. Take the invitations with you, I said firmly. Mum stared at me. They're already addressed and stamped. Not my problem, I didn't agree to this. Fine. She grabbed her purse. Jessica, get the box. My sister hesitated. Mum, maybe we should... Now, Jessica. As they gathered the invitations, an envelope slipped out. I picked it up. It was addressed to the Montgomerys. Jessica's future in-laws. The return address sticker caught my eye, and something cold settled in my stomach. Mum, I said slowly, these stickers have my phone number on them too. She didn't meet my eyes. People need a way to call with questions. You put my personal cell phone on wedding invitations that went to 100 people I don't know. My voice rose in disbelief. Only the important ones, Jessica said quickly, like Derek's family and the guests from his side. The realization hit me like a physical blow. You're using me to impress the Montgomerys. You wanted a fancy address in Rittenhouse Square instead of your place in northeast Philly. The flash of guilt across both their faces confirmed it. This wasn't just about convenience. It was about appearances. My mother, always so conscious of status, had found a way to leverage my success for Jessica's benefit. Again. Get out, I said quietly. Both of you. Emily, Jessica started. Get out! I shouted, my voice breaking. "And don't come back until you're ready to apologise." After they left, I sank onto my couch, shaking. I'd never stood up to my mother like that before. For the first time in my adult life, I'd put my own needs first, and it felt both terrifying and exhilarating. My landline rang again. Thinking it might be Mom or Jessica calling to apologise, I answered. "Hello?" I said cautiously. "Is this Emily Carter?" asked an unfamiliar female voice. "Yes, who's calling?" "This is Margaret Montgomery, Derek's mother. I received the wedding invitation today, and I had some questions about the rehearsal dinner." I closed my eyes as the woman continued speaking, my heart sinking. It had already begun. By Friday morning, I'd received 11 calls about Jessica's wedding, everything from dietary restrictions to hotel recommendations. Each time, I politely explained that I wasn't handling wedding arrangements and provided Jessica's correct contact information. Several callers seemed confused, even offended. One elderly aunt of Derek's asked if there was trouble in the family. Meanwhile, my actual work was piling up. The Peterson depositions were scheduled to begin Monday, and I still had thousands of documents to organise. I'd been at the office until midnight the previous 2 nights, fuelled by coffee and determination. "You look like hell," commented Maria, a fellow paralegal, as she dropped a stack of files on my desk. "Everything okay?" I managed a tired smile. "Family drama. Nothing new." My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "The Montgomerys are upset. They think you're being difficult on purpose. Please just help with the RSVPs." I didn't respond. Instead, I turned back to the Peterson files, losing myself in the complex details of corporate acquisitions and tax structures. Legal work had always been my escape, the one place where my analytical mind was an asset rather than a liability, where problems had clear solutions governed by rules and precedents. At noon, Mr. Bradshaw stopped by my desk. "Emily, how's the prep coming?" "On schedule," I assured him, gesturing to the colour-coded binders I'd prepared. "I've organised everything by date and relevance, with cross-references for the disputed assets." He nodded approvingly. "Good work. I'd like you to attend the depositions next week. Your familiarity with the documentation will be invaluable." My heart leapt. Sitting in on depositions was a rare opportunity for paralegals, a chance to see high-stakes legal work up close. "Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. I won't let you down." As he walked away, my cell phone rang. The screen showed an unfamiliar number, the 12th wedding call of the day. I silenced it and turned back to my work. When I finally left the office at 9 p.m, I was exhausted but satisfied with my progress. The Peterson depositions were complicated, involving a tech company acquisition worth over $200 million. Being asked to attend was a vote of confidence from Bradshaw, and I was determined to prove myself worthy. At home, I kicked off my heels and checked my messages. 3 missed calls from Mum, 2 from Jessica, and several from numbers I didn't recognise. I deleted them all without listening and poured myself a glass of wine. My apartment felt different somehow, like a fortress I'd successfully defended. For the first time in years, I'd set a boundary with my family and held firm. The guilt was still there, a constant companion after years of conditioning, but alongside it was something new: pride. I was just settling in with a frozen dinner and a legal thriller when my buzzer rang. I checked the time, 10:30 p.m. It had to be Mum or Jessica again. "Who is it?" I asked through the intercom, not bothering to hide my irritation. "Delivery for Emily Carter," came the response. I hadn't ordered anything. Suspicious, I went downstairs. A courier stood in the lobby holding a thick manila envelope. "Sign here." "Please," he said, handing me an electronic pad. Back in my apartment, I opened the envelope. Inside was a formal letter on heavy stationery embossed with a stylized M. "Dear Ms. Carter," it began. "We regret to inform you that your behaviour regarding your sister's wedding has raised concerns about your suitability as maid of honour. As the parents of the groom, we feel it necessary to address this matter directly." The letter, signed by Edward and Margaret Montgomery, went on to lecture me about family duty and the importance of Jessica's special day. They expressed deep disappointment in my lack of enthusiasm and suggested that if I couldn't fulfill my responsibilities with appropriate grace, perhaps I should reconsider my role in the wedding party. I read it twice, my hands shaking with rage. Then I did something I'd never done before. I laughed out loud. The sheer audacity, strangers presuming to discipline me over a wedding I'd had no part in planning, was so absurd it crossed into comedy. My phone rang. Jessica, again. This time I answered. "Did you send the Montgomerys to do your dirty work?" I asked without preamble. "What? No." She sounded genuinely confused. "What are you talking about?" "I just received a hand-delivered letter from your future in-laws suggesting I step down as maid of honour if I can't handle the RSVPs properly." "Oh my God!" Jessica's voice dropped to a whisper. "I didn't know they were going to do that. Derek's parents they're very traditional, very involved. Traditional enough to send disciplinary letters to adults they've never met. Please don't make this worse. The Montgomerys are really important people. Derek's dad is on the board of 3 major companies. They have connections everywhere." I closed my eyes, suddenly understanding. "And that's why you're marrying Derek? For the Montgomery connections?" "No." She sounded hurt. "I love Derek. But you don't understand what it's like being the younger sister of someone like you. You've always been the smart one, the responsible one. I'm just Jessica." The vulnerability in her voice caught me off guard. "Jess, Mum always compared us, you know. Why can't you be organised like Emily? Why can't you plan ahead like your sister?" I needed to find my own thing, and Derek, his family. They make me feel special. I sank onto my couch, conflicting emotions washing over me. "You are special, Jess. You always have been. Not like you." Her voice was small. "You got straight A's. You have this amazing apartment and a career. I've got pretty hair and a nice smile. And that's enough for the Montgomerys." There was a long pause. "They like that I'm decorative, easy to manage, not challenging like me," I finished. "Please, just help with the RSVPs. If the Montgomerys think our family is difficult, Derek might call it off," I supplied. "If he'd dump you because your sister won't be a doormat, is he really someone you want to marry?" Another pause. "You don't understand. This is my chance to be somebody." "You already are somebody." "Jessica," she sighed. "Just think about it, okay? For me, I've got to go, Derek's calling." After she hung up, I stared at the Montgomery letter for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and did something impulsive. I called my mother. "Emily?" She answered on the first ring, her voice wary. "It's late." "Did you know about this letter from the Montgomerys?" I asked. "What letter?" I described it, reading sections aloud. To my surprise, she sounded genuinely appalled. "They had no right," she said firmly. "No right at all to speak to my daughter that way." "But you want me to do what they're demanding," I pointed out. She was quiet for a moment. "I want your sister to be happy." "At my expense?" "Again?" "That's not fair, Emily." "Isn't it? My entire adult life has been about making sacrifices for this family. When do I get to put myself first?" The silence stretched between us, filled with years of unspoken resentments and expectations. "I never meant to hold you back," she finally said, her voice softer than I'd heard it in years. "After your father died, I was drowning. You were so capable, so strong. I leaned on you too much." It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever heard from her. "I need to be my own person, Mom. I need to have boundaries." "I understand," she said slowly. "But please don't cut us out of your life. Despite everything, that we're still family." As I hung up, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of a new understanding between us. My mother had acknowledged, however obliquely, that she'd been wrong to demand so much from me. It was a start. I looked at the Montgomery letter again, then at my dining table covered with Peterson case files. Tomorrow would be another long day of preparation. The depositions, my chance to prove myself professionally, began Monday. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Please, Em, I need you." I set the phone down without answering and went to bed, still uncertain what I would do. Saturday morning, I woke early and headed to the office. The weekend security guard nodded as I badged in. He was used to seeing me work weekends. The empty office was peaceful, allowing me to focus completely on organising the final documents for Monday's depositions. Around noon, my cell phone rang. It was Jessica again. I hesitated, then answered. "Hey, Jess." "Em, thank God." She sounded frantic. "The Montgomerys want to meet you, today, for tea at their house." I blinked, blindsided. "What? Why?" "I don't know. Margaret just called and said they need to assess the situation with you before things go any further." Her voice cracked. I'm scared. I think they're looking for reasons to call off the wedding." "That's ridiculous," I said, although after the letter, nothing seemed too outlandish from these people. No one calls off a wedding because the bride's sister won't handle mail. "You don't know them. Image is everything to the Montgomerys. Please, just come to tea. Be nice. Agree to help with the wedding." I looked at the careful work I'd done all morning, the colour-coded tabs and organised exhibits. Monday's depositions represented a pivotal moment in my career, a chance to impress Bradshaw and potentially revive my law school dreams. "I can't, Jess. I'm working on an important case." "More important than my future," she cried. "This is my whole life, Emily." The familiar guilt twisted in my stomach. "When and where is this tea?" 4:00, their house in Chestnut Hill. She gave me the address. "Wear something nice. Conservative." I glanced at my watch. It was 12:30. If I pushed hard, I could finish my work and still make it to Chestnut Hill by 4. "Fine," I said reluctantly. "I'll be there, but I'm not staying long." Jessica's relief was palpable. Thank you, I love you, Em." After she hung up, I worked with even greater intensity, racing to finish before I had to leave. By 2:30, I'd completed the essential preparations. The rest could wait until Sunday. At home, I showered quickly and stood before my closet, considering what conservative meant to people like the Montgomerys. I settled on a knee-length navy dress, pearl earrings that had belonged to my grandmother, and low heels. Professional, understated, but not trying too hard. The Montgomery estate in Chestnut Hill was exactly as pretentious as I'd expected, a sprawling stone mansion set back from the road behind wrought iron gates. As I pulled my modest Honda Civic into the circular driveway, I felt acutely out of place among the luxury vehicles parked there. A uniformed maid answered the door. "Ms. Carter, they're expecting you in the garden room." She led me through a foyer that was larger than my entire apartment, past oil paintings of stern-looking ancestors, to a sun-filled room overlooking manicured gardens. 4 people rose as I entered, an older couple I assumed were the Montgomerys, Jessica, and a young man who had to be Derek. "Emily, how lovely to finally meet you," said Margaret Montgomery, extending a hand. She was a slim, elegant woman in her 60s, her silver hair perfectly coiffed. "We've heard so much about you." I doubted that very much. "Likewise, Mrs. Montgomery. Please call me Margaret." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "This is my husband, Edward, and of course our son, Derek." Edward Montgomery was tall and imposing, with the confident bearing of a man accustomed to power. He shook my hand firmly. "Ms. Carter." Derek was handsome in a bland, preppy way. Sandy hair, blue eyes, khakis, and a polo shirt. He smiled nervously. "Hi, Emily. Jessica talks about you all the time." I glanced at my sister, who was perched on the edge of a brocade chair, looking terrified. She wore a pink dress I'd never seen before, her hair and makeup impeccable. She gave me a pleading look. "Please sit." Margaret gestured to a chair. "Tea? Or perhaps something stronger?" "Tea is fine, thank you," I said, sitting across from Jessica. A strained silence fell as the maid poured tea into delicate china cups. I waited, curious to see what this assessment would entail. Edward cleared his throat. "Well, Miss Carter—" "Emily, please." "Emily, We asked you here today to discuss some concerns we have about the wedding arrangements. I sipped my tea calmly. What concerns would those be, Mr. Montgomery? He exchanged a glance with his wife. It's our understanding that you've been resistant to assisting with the wedding preparations, specifically the matter of the response cards. I wasn't resistant, I corrected. I was never asked. My address and phone number were used without my knowledge or consent. Margaret's eyebrows rose. Surely a small inconvenience for your sister's happiness? It's not the inconvenience. Mrs. Montgomery, it's the assumption that my time and property are available for others to use as they see fit. Jessica made a small, distressed sound. Derek looked uncomfortable. Family helps family, Edward said firmly. That's how it works. I agree, I replied. Which is why I've spent the last 14 years helping my family in countless ways. But help should be requested, not demanded. Margaret set down her teacup with a sharp clink. Jessica led us to believe you were estranged from the family, that you'd refused all involvement in the wedding. I looked at my sister in surprise. She wouldn't meet my eyes. That's not true, I said carefully. I only learned about the invitations when they were delivered to my doorstep last week. Jessica, Edward turned to my sister. Is this accurate? Jessica twisted her hands in her lap. I might have exaggerated a little. Emily's really busy with her job, and Mum thought it would be easier to just handle things without bothering her. I see. Margaret's tone was arctic. So you misled us? No, I just... Jessica looked desperately from Derek to his parents. Emily's always been the perfect one. I wanted to show you that I could handle things myself. By using your sister's address without permission, Edward's disapproval was palpable. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. I didn't think it would be such a big deal. I watched the scene unfold with growing unease. The Montgomerys' reaction seemed disproportionate to the situation. This wasn't just about wedding invitations or family duty. Something else was going on. Mr. Montgomery, I said, setting down my cup. What's this really about? He studied me for a long moment. Directness. Refreshing. He leaned forward. Very well. Our family has certain standards, traditions. The people our son associates with reflect on the Montgomery name. And you're concerned I don't meet those standards? I asked, raising an eyebrow. We're concerned about patterns of behaviour, Margaret interjected smoothly. Deception troubles us deeply. If you're suggesting I've been deceptive, not you, Edward cut in. Your sister. Jessica paled. Derek reached for her hand, but his father shot him a warning look and he withdrew. I suddenly understood. This wasn't about me at all. The Montgomerys were using this minor drama as a pretext to question Jessica's suitability as a daughter-in-law. My sister made a mistake, I said firmly. One that affected me, not you, and I've already forgiven her. Jessica's head snapped up, her eyes wide with surprise and gratitude. Admirable, Edward said, not sounding admiring at all. But it speaks to a pattern of impulsivity that concerns us. Dad, Derek said quietly. That's enough. Is it? Edward rounded on his son. The Carters don't come from our world, Derek. There are expectations. Oh. I think I understand your world perfectly, Mr. Montgomery, I interrupted, anger building inside me. It's a world where people are judged by their address and their bank account, not their character, where tradition is code for snobbery. Margaret gasped. Edward's face darkened. Emily, please, Jessica whispered. But I'd had enough. Of the Montgomerys, of being manipulated, of watching my sister shrink herself to fit into their narrow definition of acceptability. Let me be clear, I said, standing. I love my sister. She's kind, generous, and genuine, qualities that seem in short supply in this house. If you can't see her worth beyond some arbitrary standard of suitability, then perhaps Derek would be better off finding someone who meets your specifications. I turned to Jessica. Jess, You deserve someone who loves you for exactly who you are, not who their parents want you to be. And you definitely deserve better in-laws than these judgmental snobs. Edward rose to his feet. How dare you speak to us that way in our own home? How dare you interrogate me about my sister's character? I shot back. Jessica, we're leaving. To my surprise, she stood immediately. I'm sorry, she said to the Montgomerys. Then to Derek, call me later. He nodded, looking torn. I will. As we walked out, I heard Edward's voice behind us. Derek, if you follow them, you can forget about your position at the firm. Outside, Jessica burst into tears as soon as we reached my car. Oh my God, Emily, what have we done? They're going to make Derek call off the wedding. I hugged her tightly. If he does, he doesn't deserve you. But I love him. She sobbed against my shoulder. Does he love you enough to stand up to his parents? I asked gently. Because that's what love looks like, Jess. Not compliance, not convenience. Love is brave. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. When did you get so wise? Probably around the time I started standing up for myself. I smiled, helping her into the passenger seat. Come on, let's go get ice cream and figure out what to do next. As I drove away from the Montgomery estate, I felt lighter than I had in years. Whatever happened with Jessica's wedding, something fundamental had changed between us. For the first time, I'd stood up not just for myself, but for her too. Not as the responsible older sister fixing everything, but as an equal defending someone I loved. The invitations, the RSVPs, even the Montgomerys' disapproval, none of it mattered compared to that. At Bassett's Ice Cream in Reading Terminal Market, Jessica and I sat across from each other at a small table, just as we had countless times growing up. She picked at her strawberry cone, her earlier tears replaced by a quiet thoughtfulness. They're always like that, she finally said. Judging, testing. Nothing I do is ever good enough. I raised an eyebrow. And you want to marry into that family? I want to marry Derek, she corrected. He's not like them, not really. But he doesn't stand up to them either. Jessica sighed. It's complicated. The Montgomerys own the law firm where Derek works. They paid for his education, his car, his apartment, everything. So he's financially dependent on them, I observed. That's a problem, Jess. I know. She looked down at her melting ice cream. But we had a plan. After the wedding, Derek was going to take a job offer from a different firm. One where his dad doesn't have influence. Does he have that offer in writing? Not yet, but he's brilliant, Em. Any firm would be lucky to have him. She hesitated. The problem is, we need his parents to pay for the wedding. It's all arranged. The 4 Seasons, 300 guests, a 10-piece band. If they pull their support, then you have a smaller wedding, I said practically. One you can afford yourselves. She shook her head. You don't understand. This wedding, it's my chance to prove I'm good enough, that I belong in their world. The sadness in her voice broke my heart. Oh, Jess, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. Easy for you to say. You've always known who you are. I laughed without humour. Have I? I've spent my entire adult life trying to be what everyone else needed me to be. The responsible daughter, the surrogate parent, the family fixer. You're more than that, Jessica said softly. You're the bravest person I know. The simple statement caught me off guard. I'm not brave. You are. You stood up to Mum. You stood up to the Montgomerys. You've built this amazing life despite all the sacrifices you've made for us. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I've always admired you. I never knew how to tell you. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I admire you too, you know. Your ability to see the good in people. Your optimism. My naivety, you mean, she said with a sad smile. No. Your hope. Your willingness to believe things can be better. It's a gift. Jess! My phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Bradshaw. Checking in on the Peterson prep. All on track for Monday? The real world intruded, reminding me of the work still waiting. I need to get back to the office, I said reluctantly. The depositions start Monday and I'm not quite finished preparing. Jessica nodded. Go, I'll be fine. I think I need some time to think anyway. Where will you go? Back to Derek's parents? She shuddered. God, no, I'll stay with Mum tonight, figure things out from there. I hesitated. You could stay with me. The couch isn't comfortable, but… Really? Her face lit up. You wouldn't mind? Of course not, you're my sister. I smiled. Just don't forward my mail without asking. She laughed, the tension between us finally breaking. Deal. That night, after I finished at the office, Jessica and I ordered Chinese takeout and talked, really talked, for what felt like the first time in years. She told me about meeting Derek at a charity event, how kind he'd been, how different from the entitled rich boys she'd dated before. I shared stories about my work, my dreams of eventually going to law school, my frustration at always putting my own goals last. You should do it, Jessica said, twirling lo mein around her fork. Apply to law school. You'd be an amazing lawyer. Maybe, I smiled. One step at a time. First, I need to get through these depositions next week. What's the case about? I explained the Peterson merger, how a tech startup with revolutionary software was being acquired by a larger corporation, but disputes had arisen over intellectual property rights and valuation. Sounds complicated, Jessica yawned. It is, but fascinating too. I gathered our empty containers. We should get some sleep. I have to be back at the office early tomorrow. As I set up the couch with sheets and blankets, Jessica watched me thoughtfully. Em? Thank you. For standing up for me today. No one's ever done that before. I paused, struck by the simple truth of her words. Our mother had always pitted us against each other, subtly encouraging competition rather than solidarity, and I'd been so focused on being the responsible one that I'd never considered being the protective one. That's what sisters are for, I said, hugging her. And Jess, whatever happens with Derek and the wedding, I'm on your side. Always. She smiled, tears in her eyes. I know that now. As I lay in bed that night, I realised something had fundamentally shifted. For years I'd resented the burdens placed on me by my family, the expectations that had derailed my own dreams. But standing up for myself hadn't meant cutting ties, it had meant establishing healthier relationships, with boundaries and mutual respect. For the first time, I felt like Jessica saw me as a person, not just a role. And I saw her more clearly too, not as the spoiled younger sister who got everything handed to her, but as a young woman struggling to find her place in the world, just as I had been. The wedding drama was far from over. The Montgomerys wouldn't give up easily, and my mother would have her own opinions once she heard about the confrontation. But tonight, in the quiet of my apartment with my sister sleeping peacefully on the couch, none of that seemed to matter. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Sunday morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of quiet conversation from my living room. Confused, I threw on a robe and padded out to find Jessica and my mother sitting at my dining table, heads bent together over steaming mugs. Mom, I said, startled, what are you doing here? She looked up, her expression unreadable. Jessica called me last night, told me what happened with the Montgomerys. I tensed, preparing for recriminations. And I came to apologise. She gestured to the chair across from her. Sit, please. Coffee's fresh. Still wary, I poured myself a cup and sat down. I had no idea they were treating Jessica that way, Mum continued, testing her, judging her. It's cruel. That's what I said, I replied, watching her carefully. You were right. The admission seemed to cost her something. And you were right about other things too. I've relied on you too much, asked too much of you. After your father died. I know, Mom. You were grieving. We all were, she said softly. But I was the parent. I should have protected both of you, not just leaned on one to help with the other. Jessica reached for my hand across the table. We've been talking, Em, about everything. The wedding, the Montgomerys, how we've treated you. Derek called last night, Mum added. After his parents went to bed, he wants to meet with Jessica today, without his family. I raised an eyebrow. That's something, at least. Is he finally standing up to them? Jessica looked down. I don't know. Maybe. He sounded different. Well, whatever he decides, you deserve better than what happened yesterday, I said firmly. Mom nodded. We all do, including you, Emily. She took a deep breath. I want you to know, if you want to go to law school, I'll support you, in every way I can. I stared at her, speechless. Jessica told me about the scholarship you gave up, about how Mr. Bradshaw thinks you have potential. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. I never meant to hold you back. I was just so afraid of doing everything alone. You weren't alone, Mom, I said gently. You had us. You still do. But we need to be a family that supports each other's dreams, not just one person carrying everyone else. She nodded, reaching for my hand. I'm trying to learn that. Better late than never, right? The three of us sat together at my small dining table, the morning sun streaming through the windows, illuminating the possibility of a new beginning for our family. No more martyrdom on my part, no more entitled expectations on theirs. Just three women navigating life together, with all its complications and joys. After breakfast, Mum left to run errands, promising to return later. Jessica stayed behind, anxious about her upcoming meeting with Derek. What if he breaks up with me? She asked, helping me clean up the breakfast dishes. Then you'll be sad for a while, I said honestly. And then you'll move on and find someone who loves you enough to choose you over his parents' approval. She bit her lip. And what if he doesn't? What if he wants to go ahead with the wedding? Then you need to decide if you're marrying Derek or the entire Montgomery family, because they're a package deal unless he's willing to set some serious boundaries. Jessica nodded thoughtfully. When did you get so wise about relationships? You haven't dated anyone in ages. I laughed. Maybe that's why. I've had time to observe from the sidelines. The truth was more complicated. I'd put my personal life on hold for years, first to help raise Jessica, then to build my career, always telling myself there would be time for relationships later. But watching my sister's romantic drama unfold had made me realise how lonely my own life had become. All work and family obligation, with little room for love or even friendship. Emily? Jessica interrupted my thoughts. There's something else I need to tell you about the wedding. What now? I asked warily. She twisted her hands together nervously. Remember how I said you were the maid of honour? Yes. Well, technically, I haven't officially asked anyone yet. I've been avoiding it because... She took a deep breath. Because the Montgomerys wanted me to ask Derek's sister, Annabelle. I blinked, surprised by how much that hurt. Oh, I didn't want to, but they kept saying it would be a good way to bond with my new family, and how it's tradition for the siblings to have special roles. She reached for my hand. But after yesterday, I don't care what they think. I want you to be my maid of honour. If you still want to. The vulnerability in her eyes moved me. Of course I do, Jess. I'd be honoured. She hugged me tightly. Thank you, for everything. When she left to meet Derek, I returned to my Peterson case files, trying to focus on the final preparations for tomorrow's depositions. But my mind kept drifting to Jessica and her complicated relationship with the Montgomerys. I hoped Derek would prove himself worthy of her, that he'd find the courage to stand up to his controlling parents. Around noon, my phone rang. It was Mr. Bradshaw. Emily, he said without preamble. There's been a development in the Peterson case. The plaintiff's counsel has submitted a new batch of documents, hundreds of pages we need to review before tomorrow. My heart sank. I'll come in right away. I've already called the team. We'll be working through the night if necessary. He paused. I know it's a lot to ask on a Sunday, but I'll be there in 30 minutes, I promised. As I gathered my things, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Meeting Derek now. Wish me luck. I quickly replied, You've got this. Remember your worth. Call me later. Then I headed to the office, pushing all thoughts of wedding drama aside. The next 12 hours would determine whether I impressed Bradshaw enough to be considered for the firm's law school scholarship program. After years of putting my dreams on hold, I finally had a chance to pursue them, and I wasn't going to let anything, not even my sister's crisis, derail me again. The office was buzzing with activity when I arrived. Associates and paralegals huddled around conference tables, sorting through boxes of newly delivered documents. Mr. Bradshaw stood at the centre of it all, directing the chaos with calm authority. "Emily." He nodded as I approached. "Thank you for coming in. I need you to focus on the technical patents, anything related to the algorithm at the heart of the dispute." I nodded, accepting a thick stack of papers from him. "I'm on it." For the next several hours, I lost myself in the work, meticulously reviewing technical specifications, email exchanges between engineers, and patent applications. The case hinged on whether the startup's founders had developed their revolutionary algorithm independently or had brought intellectual property from their previous employer. Around 6 p.m., as I was cross-referencing dates on a particularly complex set of documents, I found something. An email thread that clearly showed the algorithm had been conceived before the founders joined their previous company. It was a crucial piece of evidence that supported our client's position. "Mr. Bradshaw," I called, unable to contain my excitement. "I think you should see this." He came over, scanning the emails I'd highlighted. A slow smile spread across his face. "This is excellent work, Emily. This could change the entire trajectory of the case." Pride swelled in my chest. "There's more. If you look at the timestamps and compare them with the development logs I found earlier." We huddled together, connecting the dots that formed a clear picture of independent creation. By the time we finished, it was past 9 p.m, and my phone had several missed calls from Jessica. "Go home," Bradshaw said. Noticing my glance at the phone, "You've done remarkable work today. Be here at 7 a.m. sharp tomorrow for final preparations." "Thank you, sir. I will." Outside, I called Jessica immediately. She answered on the first ring. "Em, where have you been? I've been calling for hours." "Work emergency, I'm sorry." "How did it go with Derek?" She was quiet for a moment. "Can you come home? I'd rather talk in person." "I'm on my way." When I arrived at my apartment, Jessica was sitting on the couch, staring into space. Her eyes were red from crying, but she seemed strangely calm. "Jess, what happened?" She looked up at me with a sad smile. "It's over. The wedding is off." I sat beside her, putting an arm around her shoulders. "Oh, Jess, I'm so sorry." "Don't be," she said quietly. "It was my decision." I blinked in surprise. "You broke up with him?" She nodded. "Derek came ready to fight for me. He said he'd told his parents they were wrong about me. About us. That he loved me and would marry me with or without their blessing. That sounds good." "It did. At first." She twisted her engagement ring, still on her finger. "But then he started talking about how we'd prove them wrong, how we'd have the perfect wedding, the perfect life, how I'd learn to fit into their world eventually." "Ah." And I realised he still saw me as someone who needed to change, to improve, to become worthy of the Montgomery name. She took a deep breath. "Just like Mom always made me feel I needed to change to be more like you." "Jessica? No, it's okay. I'm not blaming you." She squeezed my hand. "I'm just saying, I've spent my whole life feeling not good enough. With Mom, with school, with every relationship, always trying to become what someone else wanted." I nodded, understanding completely. "So I gave him back the ring," she continued. "I told him I needed to figure out who I am before I become someone's wife, especially someone whose family sees me as a project to be fixed." Pride swelled in my chest. "That's incredibly brave, Jess. I learned from the best." She smiled through her tears. "I've been thinking, maybe I should go back to school, finish my degree. I think that's a wonderful idea. And maybe..." She hesitated. "Maybe I could stay here for a while just until I figure things out. I can sleep on the couch, help with rent." I hugged her tightly. "Of course you can stay, as long as you need." As we sat together on my couch, I marvelled at how much had changed in just 1 week. What had begun with unwanted wedding invitations had transformed into a complete reordering of our family dynamics. Jessica was standing up for herself. Mum was acknowledging her mistakes, and I was finally pursuing my own dreams without guilt. The Peterson depositions would begin tomorrow, opening a door to my future-in-law. Jessica would begin her journey of self-discovery. And somehow, through all the conflict and pain, we'd found our way back to each other, not as the roles we'd been assigned in our family drama, but as the women we were meant to be. "Em," Jessica said softly, "those wedding invitations. I'm really sorry about that." I laughed, the absurdity of it all finally hitting me. "You know what? I'm not. Without those invitations, none of this would have happened. Sometimes the worst intrusions lead to the best outcomes." She smiled, resting her head on my shoulder. "I like that. Maybe we should put it on a greeting card." "Maybe we should," I agreed. "But first, I have depositions to prepare for. And you have a life to reclaim." "Deal," she said, "one day at a time." One day at a time. It wasn't a perfect resolution. Mum would still struggle with boundaries, Jessica would mourn her relationship, and I would continue balancing family obligations with professional ambitions. But for the first time, we were facing these challenges together, as equals rather than as assigned roles in a dysfunctional dynamic. The wedding was off, but something far more important had been affirmed. Our sisterhood, stronger now for having been tested, and our individual paths forward, clearer for having been chosen rather than imposed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the Peterson depositions for me, the aftermath of a broken engagement for Jessica. But whatever came, we would face it on our own terms, no longer defined by others' expectations or our own fears. For now, that was enough. Monday morning arrived with a sense of nervous anticipation. I woke at 5 a.m., carefully selecting a charcoal grey suit that projected both competence and confidence. Today's depositions would determine not just the outcome of the Peterson case, but potentially the trajectory of my career. In the kitchen, I found Jessica already awake, making coffee. She'd insisted on getting up early to wish me luck. "You're going to be amazing," she said, handing me a travel mug. "Go show them what Emily Carter is made of." I hugged her tightly. "Thanks, Jess. How are you holding up?" She shrugged. "One minute I feel liberated, the next I'm terrified, but I know I made the right decision." "That's all that matters," I assured her. "We'll talk more tonight." The law firm was buzzing with pre-deposition energy when I arrived. Junior associates rushed around with document boxes, while senior partners huddled in conference rooms, finalising strategy. Mr. Bradshaw spotted me immediately, gesturing me into his office. "Emily, right on time." He handed me a thick binder. "This contains all the evidence you identified yesterday, organised chronologically. You'll sit directly behind me during the depositions and flag anything relevant as it comes up." I nodded, a flutter of excitement in my stomach. "I'm ready." "One more thing." He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. "The firm's law school scholarship application. The deadline is next month. I've taken the liberty of adding my recommendation." I stared at the envelope, momentarily speechless. "Mr. Bradshaw, thank you." He waved away my gratitude. "You've earned it. Now, let's go make legal history." The depositions took place in our largest conference room, both sides facing each other across a polished mahogany table. The plaintiffs, executives from the larger corporation, sat stiffly in expensive suits, flanked by their legal team. Our clients, the 3 founders of the tech startup, looked younger and more nervous, though no less determined. For the next 8 hours, I watched Bradshaw work, marvelling at his precision and strategy. When the questioning turned to the algorithm's development timeline, the area where I'd found the crucial evidence, I slid the relevant documents forward, my heart pounding as he presented them to devastating effect. The opposing counsel's face fell as he realised the strength of our position. By late afternoon, it was clear we had gained the upper hand. The plaintiff's case was weakening by the hour, their claims of intellectual property theft undermined by the evidence I'd uncovered. When we broke for the day, Bradshaw clapped a hand on my shoulder. Excellent work, Emily. Those emails you found might have just saved our clients millions. Pride surged through me, not the dutiful pride of fulfilling obligations, but the genuine satisfaction of excelling at something I loved. This was what I was meant to do. This was who I was meant to be. As the room cleared, I gathered my notes, still riding the high of our successful day. I was so absorbed that I didn't notice the woman approaching until she spoke. You must be Emily Carter. I looked up to see an elegant woman in her 50s, impeccably dressed in a designer suit. She wasn't part of either legal team, and I didn't recognize her from the firm. Yes, I answered cautiously. And you are? Victoria Montgomery. She held out a manicured hand. Derek's aunt, Margaret's sister. My stomach dropped. The last person I expected to encounter in my professional sanctuary was a Montgomery. I shook her hand reflexively, mind racing. What can I do for you, Mrs. Montgomery? She smiled slightly. It's Judge Montgomery, actually. Eastern District of Pennsylvania. Understanding dawned. A federal judge. No wonder she had access to the firm's depositions. I apologize, Your Honor. I wasn't aware. No need for formalities here. She gestured to the now empty conference room. May we speak privately for a moment? Curiosity overrode caution. I nodded, following her back into the room. I watched you today, she said without preamble. You have an exceptional mind for legal strategy. Bradshaw relied on your input more than once. Thank you, I said, still wary. But I'm just a paralegal. For now. She sat at the table, indicating I should join her. I understand my brother and his wife have been difficult regarding your sister. I tensed. With all due respect, Judge Montgomery, my sister's relationship with your family is not something I wish to discuss in my workplace. She nodded approvingly. Good boundaries. Good. Another valuable legal skill. She leaned forward. I'm not here about the wedding, Ms. Carter. I'm here about you. Me? I sit on the board of Penn Law. Howard Bradshaw mentioned you're considering applying. I blinked, caught off guard by the sudden shift. Yes, I am. Your work today was impressive. We need more minds like yours in the legal profession, people who can think strategically and stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. She reached into her briefcase and withdrew a business card. When you submit your application, include a letter of recommendation from me. I stared at the card, stunned. I don't understand. After what happened with your brother, Edward and I have very different views on many things, including what constitutes suitable family connections. A hint of amusement crossed her face. Let's just say I find your willingness to stand up to the Montgomery patriarchy refreshing rather than offensive. You know about that. Derek called me yesterday. He's quite devastated, though I suspect it's for the best. My nephew needs to find his own path, not the one Edward has laid out for him. She stood, extending her hand again. Think about what I said, Ms. Carter. The law needs advocates with both intelligence and integrity. After she left, I sat in the empty conference room, turning her card over in my hands. The day had already been remarkable, and this unexpected encounter had added yet another layer of complexity. A Montgomery was offering to help me, not because of family connections or social standing, but because of my own merit. By the time I arrived home that evening, I was exhausted, but exhilarated. Jessica was waiting with takeout sushi and eager questions about my day. I told her everything, including the surprising encounter with Judge Montgomery. Derek's aunt wants to recommend you for law school? Jessica's eyes widened. That's... wow. I know. It's strange to think something good might come from this whole wedding disaster. She was quiet for a moment, picking at her California roll. Do you think... is it weird if I accept her help, given everything with Derek? Not if it's based on my work, not our connection to the family. I studied her face. Are you having second thoughts about breaking up with him? No, she said firmly. That was the right decision. I don't want to burn all the bridges. Derek wasn't a bad person. Just not the right person for me right now. I nodded, understanding her ambivalence. You know, it's possible to end a relationship respectfully, to acknowledge what was good about it while still recognizing why it needed to end. When did you get so wise? She smiled, the tension easing from her shoulders. I've had a lot of time to think about relationships lately, about what healthy ones look like. And? What's your conclusion? I considered the question carefully. I think healthy relationships have room for everyone to grow. They're built on mutual respect, not obligation or control, and they allow for boundaries without punishment. Like you and me now, Jessica observed. Not like before. Exactly. We ate in companionable silence for a while, both lost in our own thoughts. Finally, Jessica spoke again. I called Mum earlier, told her about breaking up with Derek. How did she take it? Better than I expected. She said she was proud of me for making a difficult decision. Jessica smiled. She also said she's proud of you for standing up for yourself. And for me. Warmth spread through my chest. That's nice to hear. She's trying, Em. We all are. The rest of the week passed in a blur of depositions, late nights at the office, and quiet evenings with Jessica. By Friday, the Peterson case had taken a dramatic turn. The plaintiffs, faced with our mounting evidence, had approached us about settlement talks. It was a testament to the strength of our position, and Mr. Bradshaw made sure the entire firm knew I had played a pivotal role in the outcome. The partners are impressed, he told me as we packed up after the final deposition. Very impressed. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a promotion in your future. Thank you, sir. I hesitated, then took a deep breath. And thank you for the scholarship recommendation. I've decided to apply. He nodded approvingly. Good. It's about time you pursued your own dreams, Emily. That night, Jessica insisted on taking me out to celebrate. My treat, she declared. I got a job today. What? Jess, that's wonderful. Where? The University of Pennsylvania admissions office. It's entry-level, but it comes with tuition benefits. I can take classes part-time while I work. Pride swelled in my chest. Look at you, making plans, taking charge. I'm so proud of you. She grinned. I had a good example to follow. Over dinner at a small Italian restaurant, we talked about the future, her classes, my law school application, our new living arrangement. For the first time, we were planning our lives side by side rather than entangled in obligation and resentment. Oh, I almost forgot, Jessica said as we finished our pasta. The wedding invitations, the ones that started this whole thing. Derek's mum had them all reprinted with their address. Apparently they're still having the event on the same day, just without a bride. I nearly choked on my wine. What? Why? Some charity gala now. Margaret says they couldn't cancel with the Four Seasons at this late date. She rolled her eyes. The Montgomery show must go on, with or without me. We looked at each other for a moment, then burst into laughter, genuine, freeing laughter that released the last of the tension we'd been carrying. So in the end, I said, wiping tears of mirth from my eyes, those wedding invitations really were never about you at all. Nope, just like the wedding itself. Jessica raised her glass. To dodged bullets and new beginnings. I clinked my glass against hers, to setting boundaries and keeping them. To sisters, she added softly. To sisters, I agreed. Outside, the Philadelphia night was warm with the promise of summer. As we walked home arm in arm, I thought about the strange, winding path that had brought us here. A box of unwanted mail had triggered a cascade of changes, some painful, some liberating, all necessary. My phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Bradshaw. Settlement offer just came in. $175 million, clients ecstatic. Your bonus will reflect your contribution. See you Monday. I showed it to Jessica, who squealed and hugged me. You did it, Em. You're amazing. We both did, I corrected her. We both found our voices. And that, I realised, was the true gift that had emerged from the chaos of the past 2 weeks. Not just standing up for ourselves individually, but learning to stand together, to support each other's dreams rather than compete for scraps of approval. The wedding invitations that had arrived on my doorstep uninvited had set in motion a chain of events that had ultimately freed us both. Jessica from a relationship built on conditional acceptance, me from a lifetime of martyrdom. Sometimes the most unwelcome intrusions bring the most necessary changes. As we reached my apartment, our apartment now, I looked at my sister and saw not the spoiled girl I'd resented, nor the responsibility I'd shouldered, but a woman coming into her own strength, just as I was. Whatever came next, we would face it on our own terms, writing our own invitations to the lives we chose, not the ones chosen for us. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.